The message came without warning. A burst of static, a few seconds of silence, and then a voice broken, desperate, and shaking. It was the voice of a woman crying for help, her words almost drowned by the sound of distant explosions. She said, "They were under attack." She said the sky was full of ships. And then there was a loud crack, the sound of metal tearing, and her voice was replaced by screams. The transmission ended there, cut off so sharply it left an echo in the control room. In Earth's Central Command, the officers stared at the screen, their faces pale. The colony was called Asterion 9, a small mining outpost at the edge of charted space. It had no military base, no heavy defenses, only a few patrol drones and a security team meant to deal with smugglers, not an invading fleet. According to the data feed, the attack was moving fast, and the colony would not survive for long without help normally. Such a cry for help would bring fleets of modern warships rushing through the void, their hulls shining, their energy weapons blazing. But the council chamber remained silent. Earth's forces were already stretched thin across the galaxy, and the nearest modern fleet was weeks away. The officials debated and argued in low voices. Some said the colony could not be saved. Others said sending reinforcements would cost too much. No one wanted to make the choice, but all knew time was running out. In the back of the room, an older officer who had been silent until now finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost too calm. He reminded them that there were other options the galaxy had long forgotten. Weapons that had not been used. In hundreds of years, locked away in old bunkers deep beneath the surface of Earth, they were dangerous, outdated, and had no place in modern warfare. But they had one advantage. They could be ready in ours. The room shifted. The younger officers frowned, thinking it was a joke. The older ones, the ones with eyes that had seen war up close, did not laugh. They remembered those weapons. They remembered the sound they made and the destruction they could bring. The council hesitated, but another scream came through the come feed, short, sharp, and full of terror. It was enough to make the decision. Orders were given. Deep under the old continents, in places where dust had lain undisturbed for generations, massive steel doors groaned open. The air inside was stale, the floors coated in a fine layer of time itself. Rows of shapes emerged from the darkness, shapes made not of sleek alloys and glowing circuits, but of thick, riveted metal. Their bodies were painted in chipped colors, some with strange markings, teeth eyes. Names that meant nothing to the galaxy, but carried the weight of human history. Technicians moved quickly, brushing off the dust, checking the ancient engines, loading heavy ammunition by hand. There were no energy cells here, no shield generators, only the old power of steel and explosives. Engines coughed to life with a roar that shook the concrete walls. The sound was rough, dirty, alive. In the hangars above, transport ships were made ready to carry the old machines to the edge of space. The younger soldiers watched in awe. They had trained with clean, precise weapons their whole lives, but these machines felt different. They were ugly in their design, dangerous in their simplicity. One soldier asked an old engineer why they were using them. The man only smiled and said, "Because these were built to win, not to survive hours later." The first convoy of transports left Earth. They were not fast by modern standards, but they moved with purpose. Inside their cargo bays, the relics of war waited in silence, their metal bodies creaking as if waking from a long sleep. The soldiers assigned to them felt an unease they could not explain. It was not fear of the enemy, it was fear of what they were carrying. These machines had fought wars before the galaxy even knew humanity existed. They had crushed enemies on battlefields where there were no rules, no peace treaties, no safe retreats. Now they were being sent to Asterion 9 to face an enemy that thought they understood war in the darkness of space. The colony continued to send out fragments of distress calls. The voice of the woman returned once, softer now, almost whispering. She said the streets were on fire. She said the air was full of ash. She begged for someone to come before it was too late. Then came the sound of something collapsing, followed by silence. The enemy fleet tightened its grip around the planet, confident that no help could arrive in time. They did not know that. Help was already on its way, not sleek warships or advanced drones, but something far older, something that fought wars long before their kind had even reached the stars. In the cargo bays of those transports, the machines waited like sleeping giants, and with each passing minute, they drew closer to waking fully. For the people of Asterion 9, hope was nearly gone. But for the invaders, something far worse was coming. Humanity's oldest weapons, returning to war after centuries of silence. The alien ships hung in the pale blue sky above Asterion 9 like dark, silent predators. Their hulls shimmered faintly as energy shields absorbed the last sparks of the colony's weak defense turrets. On the ground, alien landing craft spread. Across the mining settlement, their troops moving with precision, cutting down anyone who resisted. The air was filled with the sharp hum of their energy rifles and the low thud of collapsing buildings. To them, this was just another easy conquest. The humans here were unarmed civilians, miners, engineers, no threat to a trained invasion force. The alien commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the operation with cold satisfaction. He did not know that his enemies were already on their way, and that the war about to come was not the kind he understood high above the outer edge of the system. Human transport ships broke from faster-than-light travel. Their designs looked nothing like the sleek craft the galaxy expected from Earth. These were blocky, heavy, and built for carrying weight, not beauty. The alien sensors picked them up almost instantly, and laughter rippled through the enemy command channels. These slow, outdated ships posed no danger. The invaders thought they were supply freighters or evacuation craft. But when the first cargo bay doors opened, their amusement turned into confusion. From the shadows of the transports emerged machines the aliens had never seen before. They had no energy cores glowing at their center, no shield emitters, no polished composite armor. Instead, they were slabs of thick steel, their edges scarred from battles fought centuries earlier. Their weapons were long barrels of blackened metal, wide enough to swallow a man's arm. Painted on their sides were strange faces, rows of teeth, snarling beasts, and human words no alien could read. The first of these machines dropped from the transport bay, hitting the ground with a thundering crash that sent dust spiraling into the air. Engines roared, treads bit into the dirt, and the relics began to move. The alien commander ordered his forward units to engage immediately. Energy fire rained down on the advancing machines, but to his shock, the blasts only scorched the paint. The steel beneath did not melt, did not shatter it, held firm. Then the humans fired back. There was no beam of light, no shimmer of plasma, just a deafening crack that echoed across the battlefield. A solid metal shell, moving faster than the eye could follow, tore through the air and slammed into an enemy cruiser, hovering low over the colony. The impact was devastating. The shell punched clean through the ship's shields, ripped open its hull, and exploded inside with a force that turned the entire craft into a ball of fire. Wreckage rained down onto the street. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then another machine fired. Another enemy craft fell from the sky, its frame twisting as it burned. The alien troops, used to clean, precise energy battles, were suddenly facing a kind of violence they had never experienced. The air was now filled with the heavy, brutal rhythm of kinetic fire. Buildings shook, the ground trembled, and the smell of burning metal replaced the ozone temps of plasma fire. The alien commander barked frantic orders, demanding that his troops target the human machine's weak points, but none could find any. The relics kept advancing, their treads grinding over rubble, their barrels swiveling with deadly patience from the colony's underground shelters. Civilians peered out through cracks in the walls. They'd expected to see modern warships swooping in to save them. Instead, they saw ancient armored beasts rolling through the streets, belching smoke, their guns roaring like thunder. The human soldiers who rode with them were different too. They wore heavy armor plates instead of lightweight combat suits, their helmets shaped with old designs. They carried weapons that fired solid rounds instead of energy bolts. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before, not rushing, not hesitating, simply pushing forward as if nothing could stop them by midday. The enemy's front line had collapsed. The aliens tried to retreat to higher ground, but the human relics had already locked them in. Every attempt to regroup was met with precise, crushing fire from the old machines. The alien commander, now pacing on his bridge, began to realize something he had never considered. These humans weren't using outdated technology because they lacked better options. They were using it because it worked, and because it terrified their enemies in a way no modern weapon could. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were not laughing. They were wondering just what kind of people would drag weapons from centuries past into a modern war, and what else they might still have hidden away. Night fell over Asteria 9, but the war did not pause. The colony's streets were lit by the orange glow of burning buildings and the occasional flash of gunfire. Smoke curled into the dark sky, blotting out the stars. The alien forces had pulled back to the far side of the settlement, regrouping behind hastily erected shield barriers. Their commanders thought the humans would halt their advance until daylight, as most modern armies did. But these were not modern soldiers. These were warriors trained in the ways of old wars, and old wars had no pauses. The humans moved in the dark like hunters, their armored boots heavy on the ground, their weapons clutched tight. The ancient machines rumbled forward without hesitation, their engines growling low, each movement echoing through the empty streets. Like the footsteps of giants, the aliens watched from behind their shields, unnerved by the sight. Energy-based armies were silent killers, quick flashes, clean strikes, but these humans fought with noise. Every shell they fired cracked the air like thunder. Every tread rolling over debris sent vibrations through the ground. Something even stranger. The humans did not rush their shots. They fired, waited, and moved with slow, crushing purpose. It was as if they already knew where the enemy would be before they got there. More than once, an alien squad took cover behind a wall, only for a shell to punch through it seconds later. Reducing everything behind it to dust, it was not luck. It was experience, the kind of experience you only got from generations of brutal, unending conflict inside the colony's ruined marketplace. A squad of human soldiers paused to reload. They worked without speaking, passing heavy shells from hand to hand, sliding them into the tanks with practiced ease. Their breath came out in clouds in the cold night air. Somewhere down the street, the slow sound of metal treads grew louder, and then the shadow of one of the old war machines rolled into view. Its barrel was blackened from constant firing, its paint chipped and burned, but its engine roared as if it was alive. The crew inside exchanged a short wave with the infantry. Before pressing forward into the dark, overhead an enemy drone zipped through the smoke, scanning for targets. One soldier knelt, shouldered his rifle, and fired a single shot. The drone's hull shattered, and it fell to the ground in a shower of sparks. No one even looked up. Had seen it happen 100 times before. The alien commander grew restless in his forward base. His scouts reported that the human forces were moving with an almost unnatural precision, striking weak points without hesitation. It was as though they could smell fear. He had ordered more energy weapons brought in, heavier cannons capable of piercing thick plating, but so far nothing worked. Every time they scored a hit, the old machines kept going, smoke and fire pouring from their holes, but never stopping. The aliens were used to enemies that broke and ran when the odds turned against them. These humans didn't run. They pressed forward no matter the cost. To the commander, it felt less like fighting an army and more like trying to stop a force of nature in the early hours of the morning. The alien defensive lines started to crumble again. Their shield barriers, built for quick energy skirmishes, were never meant to withstand the constant pounding of solid metal shells. Each impact sent shockwaves through the ground, rattling the enemy to their core. One by one, the barriers failed, their shimmering blue light flickering out before shattering entirely. Human tanks rolled through the gaps without slowing there, barrels turning with mechanical precision toward the next target. The alien soldiers, desperate to slow them down, fell back into the hills beyond the colony, firing blindly into the smoke. It made no difference. The humans followed like shadows, their silhouettes outlined by the burning ruins behind them. The middle of the chaos, a strange sound rose from the human lines. It was not the roar of engines or the crash of gunfire it was singing. Deep, steady voices carrying an old war song in a language the aliens didn't understand. The sound rolled across the battlefield, low and haunting, a rhythm that matched the slow advance of the tanks. For the colonists hiding in the ruins, it was a sign that the fight was still theirs to win. For the invaders, it was something far worse. It was the sound of an enemy who was not afraid to fight through the night, who took strength from every battle, who carried the weight of history with every step. The alien commander stared out into the darkness, listening to the song, and for the first time since the invasion began, he felt a tight knot of fear in his chest. The humans were not just defending the colony, they were hunting, and they would not stop until the hunt was over. By the time the second night fell over Asteria 9, the invaders had stopped talking over open channels. For their communications were full of confidence, quick orders, mocking laughter, even bets on how long the humans would last. Now, the airwaves were quiet, save for short bursts of panicked commands and the sharp tone of retreat signals. The alien commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching live feeds from the ground. Every screen showed the same sight, thick steel machines moving through the burning colony, their barrels swinging like the gaze of predators. Each shot they fired tore another hole in his forces. Each time they advanced, his troops scattered. And the strangest thing of all, no matter how many times they were hit, they just kept coming. The aliens had sent in heavier troops, now tall walkers with reinforced armor and rapid-fire energy cannons, that were meant to be unstoppable, the pride of their military. Against any other enemy they would have been, but the humans fought differently. They did not rush head-on into the walkers' fire. Instead, they circled them, using the narrow streets to cut off their movement. Old tanks, their treads grinding over rubble, would take the front while infantry slipped behind. Then came the brutal and a single shell, from point-blank range, slamming into the walkers' joints or core, sending the massive machines crashing to the ground. It was not clean, it was not elegant, but it worked every time. The alien crews died before they even understood what was happening from orbit. The alien commander ordered orbital strikes, hoping to wipe out the human relics from above. Bright lances of energy streaked down toward the streets, vaporizing entire buildings. But when the dust cleared, the humans emerged again, moving through the ruins as if nothing had happened. The commander slammed a clawed hand against the console. His weapons could destroy cities, yet they could not stop these machines from advancing one street at a time. His mind raced. Modern war was supposed to be fast, clean, and efficient. This was something else entirely slow, relentless, and suffocating. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to crush his will to fight at Allen, the colony's central district. The humans pushed forward under the cover of darkness. The tank's engines growled low, their barrels lifting to fire at enemy positions dug into high ground. Shells screamed through the night and struck with bone-shaking force, tearing shield generators apart in showers of sparks. The infantry advanced right behind them, their rifles cracking in the dark. They did not fire wildly. Every shot was placed with care, and every movement was covered by another. The aliens had never seen such coordination from troops using what they considered primitive weapons. They had expected chaos from an outdated army, but instead they faced discipline sharper than any they had ever fought against as the human lines closed in. The enemy began to break. Small squads tried to slip away into the outskirts, only to find the humans already there, blocking every exit. The alien commander watched in disbelief as his forces shrank with every passing hour. And then, through one of the ground feeds, he heard it again, that deep, rolling sound of human voices singing in unison. It was not loud enough to drown out the battle, but it carried through the smoke, steady and sure. Even the alien officers on the bridge shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting to the commander. The song was not a victory chant. It was something older, something that seemed to say the humans were not merely fighting, they were reclaiming something by dawn. The enemy held only a few fortified positions outside the colony limits. The commander knew they could not hold them for long. Paced the bridge, his mind torn between ordering a retreat and risking everything in one last push. Every instinct told him to cut his losses, but his pride would not allow it. He could not return home with this kind of defeat, not to these humans, not to relics of a forgotten war. Yet the longer he delayed, the clearer it became that the humans were not going to stop until every last one of his troops was gone. And deep down, in a place he refused to acknowledge, he realized the truth. This was no longer his battle to control. Humans had taken it, and they were not giving it back. At first light, the sky over Asteria 9 was a dull gray, heavy with smoke, and the bitter scent of scorched metal. The colony's streets were littered with the remains of alien machines, burned-out walkers, shattered shield emitters, and broken weapons that had once been considered the pride of the invaders' war fleets. But the battle was not over. The alien commander had pulled his remaining forces to the outskirts, forming a defensive ring around his largest landing site. From there, his flagship loomed above the horizon like a shadow, its weapons primed for one final stand. He believed his ship was untouchable, safe behind layers of shielding and the distance of the upper atmosphere. It was a mistake that would be remembered for generations. In the early hours, a low rumble rolled through the human lines. The colonists huddled in shelters, looked toward the source, and saw something massive being dragged into position by a convoy of armored haulers. The machines escorting it were old, but the weapon they carried looked even older. It was a railgun. Though most of the younger soldiers had never seen one outside of a museum, the barrel stretched impossibly long, its surface worn and pitted with age. Heavy cables and crude power units were bolted to its sides, and its base sat on a rotating platform so large it had to be assembled piece by piece in the open street. As the crews worked, older officers moved among them, giving orders with quiet urgency. They had used this weapon before. In wars no history book dared to describe in detail, the aliens spotted the movement from the hills and opened fire, trying to stop the humans before the weapon could be set up. But the tanks rolled forward too, shield the crews, their thick plating shrugging off blast after blast. Infantry took up positions along rooftops and shattered walls, turning fire with precise bursts that kept the enemy pinned down. Slowly, the railgun's parts locked into place. Its barrel tilted toward the sky, tracking upward toward the alien flagship high above. There was a moment of stillness as the crew loaded the first round, a solid tungsten slug longer than a man's arm, into the chamber. The weapon's capacitors began to charge, the hum growing louder. Vibrating in the bones of everyone nearby on the alien bridge, alarms began to blare. Targeting systems identified the strange weapon, but the computers could not calculate its threat level. It was too primitive, too unlike anything in modern warfare. The commander dismissed it at first, assuming it was a desperation move meant to scare him. Then the railgun fired. The sound was unlike anything the aliens had heard before, a deep, earth-shaking crack that seemed to tear the very air apart. In a fraction of a second, the slug left the barrel at incredible speed, vanishing into the upper atmosphere. Moments later, the alien flagship shuddered violently. The slug punched straight through its forward shields as if they weren't there, then tore into the hull, ripping a molten path through corridors and systems before exploding out the far side. A spray of burning debris and atmosphere vented into space. The alien crew screamed overcomes, their voices rising in panic. Reports flooded the commander's console. Second shot followed, striking the ship's main engine block. This time, the impact didn't just cripple it, destroyed. The flagship's rear section erupted in fire, breaking apart as gravity began to pull it toward the planet. The commander barked evacuation orders, but it was already too late. Massive vessel descended in a slow, burning arc, scattering debris across the horizon before smashing into the hills beyond the colony. The impact was felt even in the shelters, a low rumble that made the ground tremble. The sight broke the enemy's will. Without their flagship, the remaining alien forces began a frantic retreat, abandoning heavy weapons and even functional ships in their haste to escape. Human tanks surged forward, not to chase, but to make sure they left nothing that could threaten the colony again. The railgun crew watched the enemy scatter, then began the slow process of shutting down the ancient weapon. The officers gave it a final pat, like a soldier saluting an old comrade. The colonists emerged from hiding, their eyes wide with disbelief. Most had never seen a single alien ship destroyed, let alone a war flagship brought down by a weapon older than their grandparents by midday. The last alien craft had left Asteria 9's sky, The battlefield was silent, except for the distant clatter of human engineers working to repair what could be saved. The railgun stood in the center of the colony, its massive barrel still pointed toward the stars, a warning in steel. For the first time since the attack began, the colonists felt something stronger than fear. They felt pride, not just in the victory, but in the fact that humanity had fought this battle not with its most advanced technology, but with the raw, stubborn will of weapons that had never been built to surrender. When the last alien ship vanished into the black of space, a strange quiet fell over Asterion 9. The colony, once filled with the sharp hiss of plasma fire and the deep roar of human guns, now echoed only with the sound of boots on rubble and the low hum of repair drones. The air still carried the scent of burned metal and scorched stone, but the tension that had gripped every heart was gone. People emerged from shelters slowly, blinking against the daylight, unsure if it was truly over. And then they saw them. Old machines lined up in the main square like silent sentinels. Their barrels were blackened, their armor dented and scarred, but they stood unbroken. They had come from another time, fought in another way, and in doing so, they had saved a world. The military teams began loading damaged tanks and artillery onto transport ships. But not all of the relics were taken away. Some stayed behind. Positioned at the edges of the colony, the decision wasn't made for practical defense. Modern weapons would always arrive faster in the future. It was made as a warning. Those machines would remain where they could be seen, so that anyone who approached Asterion 9 would remember this battle and think twice. The colonists themselves began painting names and symbols on the relics, just as soldiers had done long ago. Iron Ghost, Ashbreaker, Old King. They were not just weapons now. They were legends. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than the humans could control it. On distant worlds, alien commanders whispered about what had happened here. Many refused to believe the reports at first. The idea that Earth had fought off a modern invasion with technology centuries old sounded like a myth. But the image's grainy battlefield footage of thick steel tanks rolling through burning streets, of a single massive railgun firing into the sky and shattering a war flagship were impossible to fake. It became clear to the galaxy that the humans had not just won, they had chosen to win in the most terrifying way possible. It had shown that even without their cutting-edge fleets, they could reach into the past and pull out weapons that still had the power to change a war in council. Chambers far from Asterion 9, alien leaders argued over what this meant. Some claimed the humans had done it out of desperation, that their advanced fleets were too far away to respond. Others disagreed. They believed it was deliberate a message to anyone watching. Modern armies can be understood, measured, and countered. But an enemy willing to fight with the weapons of their ancestors was something far more dangerous. Those weapons were unpredictable, brutal, and carried with them the history of wars no outsider could fully understand. They were not bound by the rules and expectations of modern combat. They were made only for victory. Back on Asterion 9, the colonists rebuilt. Streets were cleared, power was restored, and life slowly returned to the routines it had before. The attack, yet something had changed in the people. They no longer looked at their defenders as distant fleets in the sky. They thought of them as men and women who could take the past itself and use it like a blade. Children played near the parked tanks, climbing over the old armor as if touching it might let them feel some of the courage that had saved their home. Veterans from Earth stayed to train the local militia, teaching them not just modern drills, but also the rough, practical skills passed down from older wars. How to keep a machine running with limited parts. How to hit a target without relying on sensors. How to fight when there's nothing left but grit. Weeks later, a small memorial was held in the square. No grand speeches were made, no medals handed out. Instead, the railgun crew stood silently before their weapon, its barrel raised toward the stars. One of the older officers finally spoke, his voice carrying over the crowd. He told them that history was not something locked in books. It was alive, breathing in the steel of those machines and in the hearts of those who fought beside them. He said the galaxy would remember Asterion 9 not just as a victory, but as a warning that when humans are pushed to the edge, they do not simply fight with what they have. They fight with everything they have ever been, far away, in the shadows. Of the galaxy's ruling worlds, those words took root. And so, it became known across countless star systems. If you ever hear the cry for help from a human world, and you see the sky fill not with sleek fleets, but with slow, heavy shapes from the past, it means the same thing it meant on Asterion. 9. Someone has pushed humanity too far, and now the oldest weapons have returned to war. And when that happens, the war is already over, you just haven't realized it yet.